Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and today for Tag Tuesday, I have for you two different tag type things that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be starting off with the Moody Reader tag, which is a set of questions that was made by Brittany at Slanted Spines, and I was tagged by, I believe, several people, but the one I noted down, the first person that tagged me in it was Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, and it's taken me months to get to this. As anybody on BookTube for a while probably can tell you, start getting behind on tags. That's why I'm doing two. So after those 11 questions, I'm also going to do something that I just saw very recently uh, on a couple of channels, and it's the page 112 challenge, which is challenge tag, some same kind of thing. I wasn't tagged in this, but this was absolutely uh, fascinating to me to consider doing this tag, uh, where you pick a couple of books, you read page 112, and you go just based off of that. And the idea on this being that the opening chapter, the opening pages are what are meticulously gone over by the writer, by the editor, by the publisher. So you'll jump in on page 112 and you'll get to see them kind of in the middle of things and see how their writing resonates with you at that point in time. So it's a very different approach. Last month I did the quick to judge tag where I picked 10 books and read the first paragraph of each. So I'm going to do five. And following that same kind of thing, let me know your thoughts, your ranking on this. Let me know how you would sort them. I'm not even going to reveal what the books are until probably next week when I make my official TBR video for August, because whichever one I'm picking as the winner is going to potentially be an August read. I say potentially because I've already got a pretty full August lining up, but it will be my mood read, so to speak, for that month. So let's jump right into the Moody Book Tag. Question one, do you consider yourself a mood reader? Yes and no. Normally I am a mood reader. Since starting BookTube, I have become very structured in trying to plan things out. And it's helped me to read a tremendous amount of stuff in a short amount of time. Granted, a lot of these are shorter works that I've been able to just plow right through, and some of them are supplemented with audiobooks, which I listen to at 1.5 speed to get through them quickly. Um, but yeah, I sometimes I can be a mood reader, sometimes I'm not. Question two, do you set TBR lists and do you stick to them? Yes, I have been setting a TBR list, and yes, I've stuck to them so far. I add to them as I'm going through. I let myself mood read on occasion to grab an extra book or two. That's how I got to the Stainless Steel Rat last month, for instance, and the Forever War. The Forever War. That was such a great mood read. And most of the time, my mood reading tends to go more into the audiobooks because at a certain point in time, I'll run into in the month where none of my reads for that month are in audio form anymore. So I've got to figure something out that I want to read. Question three, do books affect you emotionally? What does the mood of a book rub off on you? Not really. They don't really impact me emotionally. Now I feel emotions while I'm reading the book, but it doesn't really stick with me throughout the day or week or whatever. Otherwise, I'd probably avoid reading uh, Song of Ice and Fire or even Red Rising because, my goodness, those would be impactful. Question four, when you're feeling sad, what do you read? Or do you not read when sad? Uh, it doesn't change. If I'm sad and I'm really needing something that's a pick me up, I might grab a comfort food kind of read, such as The Hobbit. But even that, probably not. I don't find that I often need to do that. Question 5. Most often, do you use reading to escape, to learn, or to critically reflect? Yes. Yes. Um, all three. And anybody that's seen my TBR list heard me talk about my ideal bookshelf, anything like that. It comes as no surprise. I read fiction, I read nonfiction, I read medieval literature. My ideal bookshelf is full of things that are going to have annotations and notes and commentaries and things of that nature so that I can not only read the text but also get that extra layer of interaction in there. So, yeah, all of them. But most often, not necessarily as an escape, just enjoyment. And it doesn't matter what type of reading it is, I'm enjoying it. Question 6. What is a book that made you laugh out loud? I don't know that I laugh out loud during books. Um, I can't think of one. Probably years ago, years and years ago, first time reading something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, maybe. Question 7. What is a book that has made you cry? Or if you don't cry, one that really moved you. And I did confess that the Forever War did make me teary-eyed. Didn't make me cry. It's not like I was a sobbing mess or anything, but it moved me emotionally at the end. Um, the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit almost always get me. So, you know, it is what it is. Number 8. What is a book that you didn't even know how you felt about? Like some others, I don't even know how I feel about the wording on that question. Um, I generally have a pretty clear idea of how I feel about books when I'm done reading them. I guess the one that would qualify most recently on this would probably be Antonia Fraser's King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table, which I DNF'd this month because it was just absolute disappointment. Uh, the writing itself wasn't bad. The stories, were semi familiar with some twists on them. It just wasn't resonating with me at all, and I was not enjoying it. And I was trying to plow through the pages to try to just be done and move on to the next book. And so I set it aside and threw it in my Friday Reads video, much to the delight of some of my viewers. So, yeah, I guess that one kind of qualifies. Question 9. Are you more likely to read on a sunny day or a cloudy day? Yes. Oh, I need to pick one? Both. Question 10. Do you usually set the mood when you read? Music, lights, smells, etc. What are you doing with your books? I guess I no. Do I set the mood? No. Can I put on music if it has no lyrics? Sure. Um, and sometimes that helps me focus. I when I'm working and not listening to BookTube, I usually throw on music that's lyricless. Uh, Bruneville is a good one. I threw on a lot of remixes by Rebecca Tripp because she has a lot of good video game remixes from RPGs that I enjoy. Um, but yeah, and sometimes I'll throw on something like Fawn, which has lyrics, but they're almost always in German, and I don't know German, so it doesn't distract me. But I don't need any of those to read. I don't. I mean, I need light, but I don't have special lights or smells or snacks or anything like that. Then, question 11. Can you leap from book to book, or do you need buffer time between them? Um, if you watched one of my Friday reads this month, you know that I'm reading like 7 books at any given time during the month. I jump from book to book. I'm a book hopper. I am notorious for it. I was reading out of a book earlier today, a different book about 20 minutes ago, and I'll probably read out of yet another book just before bed. Um, I like having the variety. I like being able to just dabble in what I'm feeling like, which is where my moodiness probably comes in as a reader. And that's why I make myself a variety of books on the TBR, so I can just jump into whatever I'm feeling like. So those are the questions for the Moody Book Tag. I know a lot of people have already done this. I'm not going to tag anybody in it. Cancel that. The 10 folks that I tagged for you to go check out in my Booktubers Assemble video. I'll have all 10 of them down below. You 10 are tagged. So if you're watching this, tag your it. If you've already done it, that's okay. Great. If you haven't done it, I'd like to see this. So now the page 112. So again, I'm not even going to tell you what these books are. I'm going to actually mix up my order here even so that I don't have any. I'll know what the book is that I'm reading out of, but you won't have any kind of inclination where I'm going from, and I'll reveal it again next week. So page 112. And if you recognize the book as I'm reading it, feel free to let me know in the comments. Take a guess. So this one, I'm going to start just a little bit on 111 because it starts mid-paragraph on 112. Abel worked quickly, carefully squeezing together the edges of the cut on my thigh and spraying it with an antiseptic adhesive. It stung, and I winced, not afraid to show it. Thrush had made a face when Abel closed the wound on his arm, and that gave me permission to do the same, or so I felt. You should have thought it might hurt before making idiots of yourselves, Abel said, but neither of you were thinking, were you? My face, I said. Will it scar? He shrugged. Both of you will probably scar, but nobody on board is going to feel sorry for you if you do. I looked at Thrush only once, and that to verify what my nose had told me. Some time during the fight, he had pissed in his waistcloth. I took grim satisfaction in that, then remembered he had challenged me to cut his throat, even though he had been scared to death. A brave man, and a dangerous one. I had humiliated him, and he would never get over it. But the overwhelming hatred I felt for him had burned itself out, so had any attraction. Abel had just finished stitching up Thrush when there was a small commotion in the corridor, and the captain pushed in through the shadow screen. He nodded at Abel. You can finish up later. After the fat doctor had gone, the captain sat on the magnetic countertop, gripping the edge so he wouldn't float off. I don't suppose either of you has an explanation, he said quietly. Thrush looked away and said nothing. Finally, I said, Did you talk to Pippet? I was surprised by the antagonism in my voice. He nodded. I saw her and talked to her. Right now, I'm more interested in why the two of you tried to kill each other. I glanced at Thrush. He would have killed me, I said. The captain looked irritated, and in all likelihood you would have killed him if you hadn't been stopped. I stopped myself, I said, sullen. His eyes were very bright and very thoughtful. Answer my question, Sparrow. Why? I'm a friend of Pippet's, I said. So was Thrush at one time. My jaw dropped. He shot a contemptuous look at Thrush and said, Not a very wise one, or a very compassionate one. You were in love with her, weren't you, Thrush? And when she didn't return it, you began to hate her. Thrush looked away sullen and didn't answer. The captain slipped off the counter and floated in silence for a moment while he devised a punishment. Both of you are in Coventry until we arrive at Aquinas 2. When not on station, you're confined to quarters except by special permission. There will be no talking to each other or to anybody else except in the line of duty. All crew members are likewise forbidden to talk to you or have anything to do with you. If they do, the same punishment applies to them. So that was book 1. Now we have book number 2. We're going to get up to page 112. All right. But stay, 3 riders on the opposite ridge had turned and vanished on the other side, and now one, sitting his steed at the crest of the western ridge, not 100 yards from where Cormac lay, looked long and narrowly down into the mass of trees at the foot of the slope. Cormac saw suspicion grow on his brown, hawk-like face. He half turned as though to call on his comrades, then instead reined his steed down the slope, leaning forward in his saddle. Cormac's heart pounded. Each moment he expected to see the man wheel and gallop to raise the alarm. He resisted a mad impulse to leap up and charge the Roman on foot. Surely the man could feel the tenseness in the air, the hundreds of fierce eyes upon him. Now he was halfway down the slope, out of sight of the men in the valley. And now the twang of an unseen bow broke the painful stillness. With a strangled gasp, the Roman flung his hands high, and as the steed reared, he pitched headlong, transfixed by a long black arrow that had flashed from the heather. A stocky dwarf sprang out of nowhere, seemingly, and seized the bridle, quieting the snorting horse and leading it down the slope. At the fall of the Roman, short, crooked men rose like sudden flight of birds from the grass, and Cormac saw the flash of a knife. Then, with an unreal suddenness, all had subsided. Slayers were slain and unseen, and only the still wavering heather marked the grim deed. The Gael looked back into the valley. The three who had ridden over the eastern ridge had not come back, and Cormac knew they never would. Evidently, the other scouts had borne word that only a small band of warriors was ready to dispute the passage of legionaries. Now the head of the column was almost below him, and he was thrilled at the sight of these men who were doomed, swinging along with a superb arrogance. And the sight of their splendid armor, their hawk-like faces, and perfect discipline awed him as much as possible for a Gael to be awed. So that was book 2. Book number 3. Then we go to cars, Simon answered warily after a long moment, for the burden is still on me. Under his plain helm, Chorus's brows rose. That it is indeed laid upon us to walk softly and watch over our shoulders the while. Though the blood of the Duke is not high and he is eyed sideways by the nobles, yet his wits are far from blunt. There will be eyes and ears within cars to mark the lowliest stranger and questions asked of the blank shields, especially if we do not strive to enlist at once under his banner. Simon gazed thoughtfully at the river barges swinging at anchor by the town quay. But he would not be inclined to enlist a maimed man. Also, are there not doctors within cars who would treat one injured in battle? A man, say, who ailed from a blow to the head so that his eyes no longer served him well? Such a one would be brought by a comrade to see the wise doctors of cars, chuckled Chorus. Yes, that is a fine tale, Simon. And who is this injured warrior? I think that role is mine. It would cover any awkward mistakes which a keen-witted eye and ear of the Duke would note. Chorus nodded vigorously. We sell these ponies here. They label us too much as being from the mountains, and in Karsten mountains are suspect. Passage can be bought on one of the river boats, a good enough plan. It was the captain who carried out the bargaining over the ponies, and he was still counting the wedge-shaped bits of metal which served as payment tokens in the duchy as he joined Simon on the barge. Chorus grinned as he slapped the handful into his belt purse. I have traitor blood, and today I proved it, he said. Half again what I was prepared to take, enough to aid in any palm greasing when we come to cars, should that be needed. And provisions to keep us until that hour. He dumped the bag he carried on board, along with an axe from which he had not been parted since he took it from the hands of Volt. There were 2 days of lazy current gliding on the river. As it neared sunset on the second, and the walls and towers of cars stood out boldly not too far ahead, Simon's hands went to his head. The pain once more shot above his eyes with the intensity of a blow. Then it was gone, leaving behind it a small vivid picture of an ill-paved lane, a wall, and a door deep set therein. That was their goal, and it lay in cars. This is it, then, Simon. The captain's hand fell on his shoulder. It is. Simon closed his eyes to the sunset colors bending the river. Somewhere in that city he must find the lane, the wall, the door, and meet with the one who waited. Book number 4. We have the very end of a chapter here. That was what the name meant, of course. Companion. Aelin swallowed. There is constriction in his throat. Was this what would make him weep tonight after everything? He reached down and his hand rested on the warmth of the dog's head. He rubbed back and forth, ruffling the fur. Kafal pushed against his thigh. The ancient name, oldest stories. A very big dog, graceful and strong. No ordinary wolfhound. To so calmly accept this change with a spoken word in the night. It wasn't, he knew, a trivial gift at all. Not to be refused. My thanks, he said. My sorrow, said Bryn again. Let him help keep you among us, lad. So that was it. Aelin found himself blinking, the lights in the farmhouse windows blurring for a moment. Shall we go in? He asked. Bryn nodded. They went in to where the lanterns were burning among the dead in the room beside the chapel, and among all the wounded children of Jad, wounded in so many different ways within the house. The dog followed, then laid down by the chapel door at Aelin's murmured command. Outside on the slope to the south, something lingered for a time in the dark, and then went away, light as mist, before the morning came. We've got one more to go. So far, I've enjoyed all four of these. Hopefully, all five. It may not be easy to choose one. But my joy was short-lived, and my heart sank once again as a moment later I saw a mighty paw insinuated into the opening, a paw as large around as a large dishpan. Very gently the paw toyed with the great rock that partly closed the entrance, pushed and pulled upon it, and then very deliberately drew it outward and to one side. Again came the head, and this time much farther into the cavern, but still the great shoulders would not pass through the opening. Ajor moved closer to me until her shoulder touched my side, and I thought I felt a slight tremor run through her body, but otherwise she gave no indication of fear. Involuntarily, I threw my left arm about her and drew her to me for an instant. It was an act of reassurance rather than a caress, though I must admit that again, and even in the face of death, I thrilled at the contact with her. And then I released her and threw my rifle to my shoulder, for at last I had reached the conclusion that nothing more could be gained by waiting. My only hope was to get as many shots into the creature as I could before it was upon me. Already it had torn away the second rocket and was in the very act of forcing its huge bulk through the opening it had now made. So now I took careful aim between its eyes, my right fingers closed firmly and evenly upon the small of the stock, drawing back my trigger finger by the muscular action of the hand. The bullet could not fail to hit its mark. I held my breath lest I swerved the muzzle a hair by my breathing. I was as steady and as cool as I had ever been upon a target range, and I had the full consciousness of a perfect hit in anticipation. I knew that I could not miss, and then, as the bear surged forward toward me, the hammer fell futilely upon an imperfect cartridge. Almost simultaneously I heard from without a perfectly hellish roar, and the bear gave voice to a series of growls far transcending in volume and ferocity anything that he had yet essayed, and at the same time I backed quickly from the cave. For an instant I couldn't understand what had happened to cause this sudden retreat when his prey was practically within his clutches. The idea that the harmless clicking of the hammer had frightened him was too ridiculous to entertain. However, we had not long to wait before we could at least guess at the cause of the diversion, for from without, came mingled growls and roars and the sound of great bodies thrashing about until the earth shook. The bear had been attacked in the rear by some other mighty beast, and the two were now locked in a titanic struggle for supremacy, with brief respites, during which we could hear the labored breathing of the contestants. The battle continued for the better part of the hour, until the sounds of combat grew gradually less, and finally ceased entirely. So, let me know which of those five you would rank the highest. Feel free to put them in order if you are so inclined. It won't necessarily sway me, but it will be a curiosity to see if my thoughts on these five match up with your thoughts on those five based on just that sampling from page 112. And I hope more people do this. I think it's a fun way to get a glimpse deeper into the book than we normally would when looking to decide whether or not we should read this book next. So thank you for watching for this Tag Tuesday, and have a great rest of your day.